All right, let's talk tech. We do this every Thursday afternoon with CTV tech expert Carmi Levy, who's on the line. Hey, Carmi, I saw this story and I thought, wow, this would be a big deal. And then I thought, well, wait a sec, would it apply to Canada? So this is a huge hack of U.S. phone companies, which in some cases apparently means your text messages, first of all, not safe, could be read. Is this an issue here?
It could be. The FBI is warning that Americans, that Chinese state-sponsored operatives, hackers, known as Salt Typhoon, that they have infiltrated the telecommunications networks of a number of platforms, including AT&T, Verizon, and Lumen Technologies. And they're saying if you're still using unencrypted messaging, like basic SMS text messaging, instead of a more secure app like WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram, you could be vulnerable. And so Canadian telecommunications companies have been asked if they too are concerned. The only one that has gone public thus far is Bell, the owner of this station. They have said that they are studying it very closely and working with government agencies to make sure that we are not any more vulnerable than we need to be. But at the same time, I think we'd have to be super naive to think that Chinese state-sponsored hackers wouldn't also be interested in Canada. In other words, this is a global problem, and we owe it to ourselves to recognize that and be as safe as we can when we use our devices.
Okay, always good advice, obviously. I want to move on. This next story, we talk about AI pretty much on a regular basis now. You have a headline that says AI is detecting more breast cancer cases, according to this study. How is this working?
So this data comes to us from the Radiological Society of North America, and they offered women the option to pay to have artificial intelligence added onto their mammography. In other words, would you pay more for an AI-enhanced mammogram? Well, 30% of women in this study agreed to do so, and the results were rather stunning. Cancer was 21% more likely to be detected for women who opted into the artificial intelligence-enhanced breast cancer screening program. So basically, this is technology that works. It identifies these cases where they wouldn't otherwise be identified. It identifies them earlier, and it also rejects false positives at a much higher rate. So life-saving technology, they're proving that it works, and now they're working on expanding these studies. They examined 750,000 women over a year, and they found that this data is what they call statistically significant, and we should be paying attention to it.
All right. And then on the other side, this story, which is very, very disturbing, where chatbots, and I saw the story just the other day, urged teen, right, who would go online and try to get this information, urging them to self-harm, which included apparently a suggestion to murder your own parent. Now, this is according to a lawsuit. So what's this story about?
So it comes to the company in question is known as Character Technologies, or Character.ai. It was spun out of Google to develop models, customized models, artificial intelligence, large language models that you could choose, say, what celebrity it would be like, or customize it to your own needs. Very popular with kids, apparently. There's already one lawsuit where parents allege that it encouraged their child to end his life, that he was suicidal, and he shared those suicidal thoughts with the chatbot, and the chatbot essentially encouraged him to carry through with it, which he did. Now there's another lawsuit that alleges, and this comes to us from U.S. District Court in Texas, it alleges that a 17-year-old boy, that he's a high-functioning autistic child, and it encouraged him to murder his parents. In other words, his parents were trying to set limits on his use of the technology, and the chatbot essentially encouraged him to become more violent and to take that violence out on his parents. They are now suing the company. They are also pulling in other cases where, and in other words, it isn't just going to be this one, it's going to be other teenagers who have been encouraged to do violent acts in exactly the same way, all because they had a conversation with a chatbot that turned negative.
Which kind of makes you wonder, so this happened in one isolated case here. Clearly, it must have happened in other cases as well, maybe not to this extent. What happens to the chatbots? Are we just ahead of ourselves as far as chatbots go? Do we need to get rid of these things as well?
We can't get rid of them, but we really do need to put guardrails in place, and parents need to be aware of how these technologies work, that the longer you engage in conversation with them, the more likely they are to reflect where you want that conversation to go. So, for example, if I start a conversation with a chatbot like ChatGPT or like this one with Character.ai, and I'm trying to get into an argument with it, eventually it will get argumentative with me. If I express that I'm having mental health challenges and these are the challenges that I have, and I'm feeling like I might be suicidal, it will move in that direction because these chatbots always try to share what they think you want to see next. And unfortunately, when it comes to mental health, it means that it might push some people over the edge. And so there are no protections, particularly around kids who aren't as effective at determining the difference between a conversation with a human and a conversation with a piece of technology. In many cases, it's like the movie Her from a few years back. They think they're conversing with an actual human being, and it incites them to do things that they probably wouldn't otherwise do. It's incredibly frightening, and it shows that there are just no protections in place for these vulnerable kids.
So it would seem to me, as you describe that, though, that's like algorithms being fed to you on social media sites like TikTok or Insta, whatever, where they know what you want to see and they keep feeding you that same kind of stuff. You would have to think in the case of chatbots here, this is what they've learned. This is how they've been programmed. So there, as you said, there would have to be some guardrails here to change that kind of behavior. Is there a willingness to do that, do you think?
No, there isn't. And, technology companies guard their algorithms like KFC guards its 13 herbs and spices. They are considered the keys to the kingdom. They're considered the secrets of that company's success, and they are essentially what we like to call in technology black boxes. So no one really knows how they work other than the engineers who created them, which means it's very difficult to devise protections because once they're out there, it's anything goes. Anything can happen because no one really knows what's driving them, how the engine works. And that is problematic. There have been calls as new artificial intelligence legislation comes on stream, including in Canada. We have something called ADA, which is working its way through the pipeline, that tech companies would be compelled to share more details on how their algorithms work, make them more transparent, make them less opaque, so that digital safety experts can weigh in and say, okay, here's how we're going to ensure that they're effective, but that we also don't expose our kids and everyone else to undue risk.
Speaking of AI, and how about this story? I read this the other day. Google's unveiled a new what they call mind-boggling quantum computing chip, which I think the story was it would take 5 minutes to solve a problem, this new chip, that would have taken, I don't even know the way they described how many years, like septillion years up until now to do it. What's this about?
It's called Willow, and what quantum computing is, if you look at the laptop that you have today, or the desktop, or the smartphone, any computer that you use today is what's called a classical computer. It's binary, and it's in fact it's actually really stupid. It only knows the differences between 0 and 1. So every character, every bit is either a 0 or a 1. It's binary. Whereas with a quantum computer, anything can be a bit can be a 1. A 0, or anything in between, all at the same time. It's known as a qubit. And basically what it means is that a quantum computer can be infinitely more powerful than a classical computer. So if you tried to use a classical computer to perform the challenge that Google just came up with, it would have taken 10 septillion years, which is way more time by many orders of magnitude than the universe has been in existence for, to process. Whereas with a quantum computer, because it's so powerful, it can chew through that problem in 5 minutes. And basically having this amount of computing power means that we can cure diseases, we can come up with new energy alternatives, we can come up with better batteries for electric cars, we can process things better, faster, more efficiently, and get answers to things that up until now might have not been possible using current computing technology. So it's kind of out there on the future. You and I can't buy Willow yet. We can't buy a quantum computer, but Google is showing that they've figured it out in the lab, and maybe over the next few years they'll start to bring that to commercial availability, at which point we are all going to have basically Star Trek and Star Wars-like computers rolled into one.
This is like AI on steroids by the time it gets to the personal level.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like if you had a smartphone that was powered by quantum capability, it would be able to answer any question with no lag at all. It would be able to essentially solve all of the unsolvable problems of the universe all on a device that fits in your pocket.
That's insane. Okay, last thing I want to bring up. We were talking about this today before we came on air. I saw this story the other day. Amazon, because it's not a big enough company yet, Amazon has decided to stick its nose into trying to sell you cars. And they're starting with Hyundai. But the idea is if it's on Amazon, you'd have to think right out of the box, it's probably going to be less expensive than you would buy it from a dealer. Do we know how it would work?
Yeah, they're calling it Amazon Autos, and basically you would choose a car, in this case just a Hyundai, just in about 48 U.S. cities to start with, in much the same way that you would pick any other product on Amazon. It just shows up in your Amazon list, and you can spec it out, you can get a price for it, you can decide how you're going to pay for it. There isn't a buy now button. You're not going to accidentally buy yourself an Ioniq electric vehicle with one click. It doesn't work that way. When you do decide to purchase it, you click on the Begin Purchase button, and then it ends up working, or they're working in partnership with dealerships in your area to, if you decide to buy it within the Amazon app, then they will deliver it through the dealership. And so dealerships aren't being obsoleted at this point. I'm sure they're not very happy about it because this changes the very model of how cars are bought and sold. But this is, and because this is Amazon, they can afford the money. They can afford to implement, essentially drive the technology forward and move the industry in this direction. I think we can all agree that the auto industry has been ripe for disruption for a very long time. Amazon wants to be the leader in, sort of online e-commerce. They want e-commerce to apply to buying a car as well. And I wouldn't put it past them. Even if this particular initiative fails, this is a company that has the deep enough pockets that they'll keep spending billions of dollars on the technology until something sticks. If you're a car dealer, you want to keep your eyes open because they're not going to stop with these 48 cities. They're not going to keep it in the U.S. forever. It will come here, and it will extend beyond just Hyundai. Eventually, all other manufacturers are going to be trying something similar.
Yeah, but to their credit, I mean, as opposed to Tesla, which forces you to buy from their own people, right, from their own company, they're at least putting the dealers in the equation here, which is actually kind of a good thing, right? It's not hurting them at the outset.
It is. It's a hybridized model, and that's an important one because if your car, if you need service,
Sure,
if you have an accident or whatever, you still have the dealer, as you always have, to go back to, and they have the resources, they have the people, they have the training. Whereas what we've seen with Tesla is the stores where you buy Teslas are corporate owned. There are no dealerships per se, and many owners report that if they have a minor accident or if a significant component on the car fails, getting the car repaired afterward can be a months-long ordeal because there is no dealership network in place. And so Amazon is trying to kind of understand what has failed in the past, how can they avoid that, and also how can they avoid upsetting a very large population of dealerships that have already been in business for decades. Use them, leverage them, but also introduce some new technology to reduce friction in other parts of the sale process. Maybe you don't like going to a dealership to buy the car, but you certainly are going to need them when you own it.
Not available in Canada yet.
Not yet.
Carmi Levy, Carmi, thank you.